From ABC News, 2020 continues. Once again, Barbara Walters.
Do you believe in reincarnation, that you lived before? According to some estimates, more than half the people in the world do, including the woman you're about to meet. She wasn't always a believer. She came to it because of the powerful and recurring images in her mind. What do they mean? Her search for answers led to an extraordinary discovery, which she's written about in her new book, Across Time and Death. And tonight, Bob Brown takes you to the places and the people in her dream. It turned out to be the dream of a lifetime.
The coastline curved away to the east and towards the open sea. I was disturbingly aware of a strong and ridiculously comforting sense of familiarity. As I stood there remembering waiting at dusk, wrapped inadequately in a black shawl, as a cold sea breeze blew inland, I could not remember the person for whom I was waiting.
This image, a woman waiting for someone to return across a bay near the Irish Sea, haunted Jenny Kukel in her dreams. Who was the woman? And who was she waiting for? It seemed so real that even as a young girl, Jenny says she was convinced that it was more than a dream, that it was somehow a fragment of her own memory, even though the woman she pictured in her dreams was much older. This is the story Jenny Kukel tells of a search to explain those memories and of an extraordinary reunion that occurred because of it. She demonstrated for us the steps she took as she grew to believe that her memory came from a life she had lived before as a woman who died in childbirth and left behind several young children. That dream, the dream of dying, was the strongest of all.
I remember being in a white room, and I knew that I was leaving the children behind, and there was nothing I could do about it. And I was always worrying about what had happened to the children.
Jenny says the name she associated with the dying woman in her dreams was Mary. And she says that even as she grew up in an English village, she identified with Mary and felt a mother's guilt at having left her children. But Jenny Kukel had a life of her own to live in Towcester, England. She and her husband Steve have 2 children, Lee and Heather. As for the children in her dreams and the woman named Mary, exploring that mystery was deferred until Jenny was settled in her home life and could spare the time to search for some kind of meaning behind her memories. She says she was reluctant even to suggest to anyone else what she had come to believe, that she had lived a previous life as Mary in a small village by the sea in Ireland, and that she was drawn to believe it was one village in particular.
I found a map of Ireland with very little detail on it at all, and I knew that somehow I would know where to find where the village was. There was nowhere interested in me except this one place, and the name Malahide was written there.
As a child, Jenny says, she had drawn a crude diagram of the streets that she dreamed of, and so she looked for more detailed maps to compare with her drawing. And she discovered there were strong similarities between her childhood sketch and that small town north of Dublin called Malahide.
I realized it was something I was going to have to resolve, and I knew I would have to wait. I was planning for years.
Just drift away. Just drift off into deep, deep relaxation.
Because Jenny was unable to afford a trip from England to Ireland to search for clues, she volunteered as a subject for a hypnotist who claimed to specialize in regressing memories. She says he helped trigger more images of Mary and her village in the year 1919.
Mary was walking down a main street. He asked what I was wearing, and I described a handmade calf-length skirt. I felt pride in the needlework.
Kukel described other details that were witnessed and documented by those who attended her hypnosis sessions. She gave descriptions of Mary's cottage and of photos on the wall, including a picture of Mary.
I'd remember just ordinary things like being in the kitchen, walking to church, just cooking and restuffing mattresses, and particularly I remember one incident of catching a hare because food was short. The children did it with a snare, and this poor thing was caught by its hips and still alive.
She says she was frustrated that hypnosis had brought her no closer to discovering what Mary's last name was. But one image she did describe vividly under hypnosis was of a church, and although she had yet to visit Ireland, Jenny says, she made a sketch of the building's outline.
There were coping stones along the top. There were piers either side. The wall was curiously blank. Very close, very large. There's a notice board in the front.
Finally, Jenny was able to save enough money to make a trip to Malahide to search for the landmarks in her mind's eye. St. Andrews, Church Street, Malahide. Jenny says that when she finally stood before the building that matched her drawing, she was convinced the town of Malahide held the answer to her mystery.
Then it meant that a lot more of the things I'd seen under hypnosis were quite likely to be accurate, as well as the memories I had always had. I realized I hadn't got a name. I would have to find out what the name was to trace the family.
She returned home to England and began writing to Irish papers, historical societies, to Malahide residents, now focusing her search on whether such a family had existed.
Dear Sir, I'm trying to trace a family of children. Their mother's name was Mary, and it was after her death in the early 1930s that the family was separated.
Dear Mrs. Cockell, sorry for the delay in writing to you. Relating to the mother who died in the 1930s.
One response was striking in the chain of circumstances it listed that coincided with Jenny's dreams. The landlord wrote back to say there had been a family in the Malahide area whose mother had died in childbirth, leaving behind 6 living children. Her name was Mary. The letter also provided one of the most significant missing details, the family's last name.
She was Mrs. Sutton. After her death, the children were sent to orphanages.
So a family had been split apart by the death of a mother named Mary. And over the next year, Jenny redoubled her efforts by writing to orphanages in Ireland until a response from a priest in Dublin provided another lead, the names of the Sutton children.
6 children were christened in St. Sylvester's Catholic Church, Malahide. I am, sincerely yours, Reverend Father Leo.
I picked up the phone and this lovely voice was at the far end of it. And she said to me, she says, I'm looking for Sonny Sutton. Wants to say, you're speaking to him.
Sonny Sutton was the eldest of the children of Mary Sutton. He was 13 years old when his mother died, and he was 71 when Jenny Cockell found him in Leeds, England.
And then she told me that she remembers my mother. She told us what we used to do when we were children. She used to say, you used to go out and catch rabbits, didn't you? And pheasants. She says, how the hell do you know all this? She says, I've seen them in my dreams. So I've been dreaming, she says, of the family, she says, for since I was 5-year-old. And after I put the phone down, I sat down beside my wife. So I think I've been speaking to my mother on the phone.
Sonny offered an explanation of one of Jenny's recurring dreams, the dream of standing on a jetty near the Irish Sea without knowing why she was waiting or for whom.
He said, oh yes, I can tell you all about that. He used to go and work as a caddie for the golfers on the island, just across the bay.
And there was a rowboat, one-man rowboat, used to row us over there. My mother used to come down and she'd sit on those steps waiting for the boat to come in. And that boat was bringing me in.
Jenny says Sonny's explanation put to rest that dream image that had haunted her since childhood. In turn, their conversations caused Sonny to wish for a reunion with the brothers and sisters who had been separated from him.
I told her that's why I don't know where any of my family is. So she said, well then, she said, well, we'll have to try and find them.
I needed to know that they were all right. I couldn't be a whole person until it was resolved.
With Sonny's help and more intense research over the next year, Jenny located all 5 living brothers and sisters. In the more than 60 years since their mother's death, the sons of Mary Sutton had met only briefly and infrequently. Mary's daughters had never again established contact, and the youngest, Elizabeth, didn't even know she had brothers and sisters. The older daughter, Phyllis, sent Jenny a photograph, finally, a picture of Mary Sutton propping Phyllis in her arms.
Christy.
It's busy, is it?
It is indeed.
How are you looking?
Okay, yes, sir.
Last year, Jenny Cakell's lifelong concern for the orphan children she dreamed of was resolved. All the living Sutton children were reunited.
Jenny.
We brought them together again in the spring in Malahide to celebrate Sonny's 75th birthday.
They should never have been separated. So it was getting them together again, finding out what had happened to all of them. That was wonderful, just to see them now.
None had led easy lives. After his mother's death, Christy was sent to an orphanage in Dublin with his brother Frank. Later, Frank joined the army, eventually married and had 3 children. Christy never married, and the brothers simply lost touch when they reached adulthood. But some of the children never knew what had become of the others until Jenny Cakell found them. Betty, the youngest, was brought up from infancy by her aunt and uncle and never told of her real family. Phyllis was raised by nuns from the age of 7 when the family was broken up. Today she has 10 children of her own. And Sonny, the eldest, stayed at home to care for their father, Mary's husband. But his father beat him regularly, Sonny says, and so at the age of 17, Sonny ran away to join the army.
Where we're entering, it's the bedroom. So we'll actually be climbing in what used to be the window.
Later that day, the brothers and sisters returned together to the site of their childhood home, the ruins of a cottage buried for years under thick brambles. Many of their recollections coincided with dreams Jenny had reported, such as finding the children standing around a rabbit caught in a snare.
Me and the children ran home to the mother and saying, "We've caught one. We've got one." And the mother came down, but the animal was still alive. And we let it go.
They also agreed that the description Jenny gave under hypnosis of the cottage that once stood here was remarkably accurate. Christy was only 6 years old the day he last saw his mother here. You remember that day?
I remember that day where I said it was now. I can picture those 2 men taking out the stretcher with Mammy and putting her into the ambulance and taking her away. And she never came back. But she's back now, she's there.
Mary Sutton died of complications following Betty's birth in a Dublin hospital. She was buried in an unmarked grave in her hometown.
I know my mother is buried here, and then walking into the site with Jenny, it gives me the feeling that my mother is with me all the time. I shed many a tear.
The graveyard had nothing. The body, the remains may still be there, but it's empty. There's no person there now. The energy, the soul is me.
What do you believe happened in the larger sense? Is there such a thing as reincarnation? Then you obviously believe there is.
Yes, for me there is. It's a perfectly normal way of looking at life, that you keep coming back.
Is it possible that at some point in your childhood you could have been asleep and the radio or television could have been on and you could have heard the word Malahide, you could have heard about Ireland?
It's an ordinary family. It's not one that would have been dramatised in a play in the 50s when I was growing up. I don't think for this particular case that could be a consideration.
April 7th, 1994, Sonny Sutton's 75th birthday party. Feeling maternal, though 35 years younger, was Jenny Cakell.
By finding all this family and getting them back in touch with each other, I felt that it had been worthwhile.
Her belief in reincarnation is a concept opposed by the Catholic upbringing of these children of Mary Sutton. They have another explanation, that their mother somehow guided this all from heaven to bring them back together as a family before it was too late.
Happy birthday to you.
I suddenly found out I felt was missing in my teens was the fact of not having a family.
I feel very close to her every time I see her. I said, there's my mother.
I'd say my mother was there all the time.
When I'm in the presence of Jenny, I feel very contented, very free and very at ease.
I'm very fond of her, and there's a great bond between us, because she's done something for my family that I couldn't do, because I was searching for years for them. She is a mother figure, and to me, she's my mother.
Regardless of whether you believe in reincarnation, or heavenly guidance, or an extraordinary coincidence between dreams and realities, something happened to the children of Mary Sutton toward the end of their lives that they say restored to them a sense of how they had once belonged to a time and place and family, and now belong again.
I had been unable to help them in their childhood, yet the whole point behind the memory was a wish to help them. My feelings remained strongly maternal, but I was able to understand that the children were now self-sufficient. I felt curiously free.
Well, whatever one believes, the family was reunited. But in talking of the belief, if you don't believe in reincarnation, the other possibility is that there was something in her memory, Jenny's memory, that she can't even remember.
That she didn't know. Yeah. Scientists are just beginning to study how much of memory is real and how much has been suggested or interpreted as being real. I also believe that coincidence is in itself a kind of phenomenon. Things happen against which the odds may be millions to one, but nevertheless they happen.
Sounds as if you don't believe in reincarnation, that you did.
No, I don't believe in it. But she lays out a number of reasons, very specific reasons in the book, why she does, and that's sort of what makes the whole process so interesting.
That makes it so fascinating. It continues to intrigue us, and it probably always will. Thanks, Bob.
We'll be right back.